My name's Christian Willauer, and I want to thank everybody for joining us today. The goal of the conversation is to talk about what's happened, and also to talk about some examples that show trends that really need to be investigated about the assessment numbers that Tyler Technologies has developed. So we're going to go through first, starting with the timeline, which was in 2018. As everybody knows, there was a court case. School advocates sued for educational equity. The court decision came back with that Delaware assessments were not uniform, that property values had changed significantly since the previous reassessment in 1983 and no longer represented the true value of money. So then in 2021, Newcastle County hired Tyler Technologies to conduct a countywide reassessment. And then, since January of 2025, which is when I started to really take a close look at these assessment numbers, things have really speeded up. So the assessments were completed in March of 2025. Tyler Technologies issued a report that said their assessment values did not meet industry standards for accuracy in the city of Wilmington. As a city council member, I sponsored a resolution which was passed. It was passed unanimously by all city council members present, that requested the city not to use the new assessment values until they meet industry standards for accuracy. In July, the tax bills were mailed. And I think everybody here understands the level of, public engagement and also public concern about many of the bills that people have received. So I wanted to talk today about important trends. I've been really looking into the property tax assessment values that were produced by Tyler Technologies for Newcastle County. And I've been looking into them since January, and there are a number of important trends. I've used publicly accessible information and also filed freedom of information requests to get, the whole data set for the city of Wilmington. And this is a summary of the trends that I've seen. One is that we all know commercial property assessment valuation declined as a portion of the tax base. That's a fact that has impacted everybody's bill, because residential properties now carry more of the total tax burden. So before, Newcastle County residential properties were paying 66%. Their portion of the total assessment value for the county property was 66%. After the 2025 reassessment, residential properties now make up 76% of the total tax base for Newcastle County. And in the city of Wilmington, that trend was even more pronounced. Before, commercial properties made up 42%. This is last year. Commercial properties made up 42% of the city of Wilmington tax base. And after the 2025 reassessment done by Tyler Technologies, commercial properties, their total values make up 29% of the total tax base for the city of Wilmington, which means that residential properties have gone from being 47% of the tax base to 57% of the tax base in Wilmington. So that is what Tyler Technologies numbers show. But the question that I think we all need to be asking is, are Tyler Technologies assessment values accurate? And the reason why I came to that question is because in looking at the data, I found that Tyler Technologies assessment values include many examples of what appear to be trends. And those key trends are that there are many small business owned commercial properties that appear to be overassessed. And there are many corporate owned commercial properties that appear to be underassessed. And then there are some very high value corporate owned commercial properties that seem very underassessed. And in addition to those dynamics that impact commercial properties, it also appears that low value homes, we have examples of many low value homes being overassessed and many high value homes being underassessed. And I just want to say, as a city council member for the city of Wilmington, I represent the 5th district, and there are many homes in the 5th district that I was contacted by residents who said, my home is overassessed. There's no way that I could get somebody to pay me the value that that I've been given by Tyler Technologies is my assessment value. I just couldn't sell my home for the assessment value. So that's how I really came to this issue. To talk about commercial properties, Tyler Technologies presented to the City of Wilmington City Council committee last fall and told us how they were going to be valuing commercial properties. Commercial properties are valued by and this is from their presentation, by the cost approach, which is basically how much would it cost to rebuild the property, and the income approach, which is how much income is that property making. So that was how Tyler Technologies was supposed to come to their valuations of commercial properties. And I just want to show some examples of the trends that that I was talking about on the other slide. So the first is overassessed small businesses. This is a meat market in the 5th District at the corner of Jackson and 4th Street. It is assessed at $834,000. And its taxes are going up. They're doubling from $2,600 to about $3,000. And you also have this gas station at the corner of, I think it's Naaman's Road and Concord Pike. Anyway, it's on 202 going out to Target. And this property, this gas station, this busy gas station on 202 is assessed at $625,000. So to me, I don't understand how both of these numbers could be correct. And I think that probably the meat market is overassessed, and the gas station is actually, it should be assessed at a lot more than $625,000. But they got these assessment values from Tyler Technologies. And Newcastle County sent out tax bills based on these assessed values. And the impact on the school taxes for these properties was that the meat market saw its taxes go up, and the gas station saw its taxes go down considerably. So this is a small business that saw its taxes go up, and this is a corporate-owned commercial property that saw its taxes go down a lot. So that's one trend that we have to really pay attention to and ask ourselves: is this true? And then we have another example. This is a underassessed corporate-owned commercial property. This is 630 Martin Luther King Boulevard, and this is actually a Delmarva building, and it's assessed at $4.3 million. And then we also have this factory, a dilapidated factory on Front Street, valued a little bit more, but about the same, $4.8 million. So Delmarva, as a result of the 2025 tax assessment, has seen its taxes go down by $78,000. And the factory, or former factory, is seeing its taxes go up by $27,000. So to me, again, we have to ask ourselves, there's this trend, commercial properties have not appreciated as much as residential properties. That's what we've been told about why residential bills are going up and why we need to split rates and things like that. But I think we need to go back to the first issue, which is, did Tyler Technology conduct appropriate assessments and give the right value to these commercial properties? Because to me, this is an example of a property that is valued at $4.3 million, but I think its assessed value should be higher. Or the factory should be lower, but both these numbers can't be correct. And then, the third type of property, commercial property, is these very large commercial properties that their impact on the tax base and their impact on total taxes received is significant. So JP Morgan Chase, this is the campus. This is that whole block that they own, close to the railroad station in the city of Wilmington. And they paid city tax of $2 million in 2024. And this year, as a result of the reassessment, their school tax that they paid at Christina School District will go down to less than $1 million. It's, they're going to be paid over $1 million less this year in taxes as a result of this reassessment. And you compare that to this other building in downtown Wilmington, the DuPont building, which was valued by Tyler Technologies at over $400 million. So the Chase block is valued at $100 million, and the DuPont building is valued at over $400 million. both, I have a hard time understanding how both these numbers could be true. And what I think is that the JP Morgan Chase complex is probably worth more than 102 million. And if it was worth more than, 100 million, then it wouldn't be paying, it wouldn't see over $1 million drop in its taxes. So that goes into, what are some of the solutions that have been proposed that I know Dover is coming back into session next week and county council is meeting this week. And, some of the policy solutions that have been proposed is to give, people payment plans to pay their taxes. And for commercial properties, it's to split the tax rate for commercial properties and residential properties. So the city of Wilmington already instituted a split rate for city taxes on commercial properties and residential properties. And I think that if we look at this example, we can see what its impact is and understand that it's not the whole solution to the fact that some very large, very valuable commercial properties, corporations are now paying less in taxes. It's significantly less in taxes. So this is JP Morgan Chase complex. It's 2025 city taxes at a flat rate. The city of Wilmington initially introduced a flat rate. At a flat rate, this JP Morgan Chase complex would have paid $464,000 in city taxes, which would be a decline from its previous amount of city taxes of $900,000, 66%. We're going to see its taxes go down by 66%. Now, then the city of Wilmington split the rate and put a little bit higher rate onto commercial properties. And this giant, this JP Morgan Chase complex now is paying a little bit more in taxes. Instead of paying just $464,000, now it's going to pay $593,000 in city taxes. But it's still getting a tax break of, over $750,000. It's getting a tax break of more than 50%. So just splitting the tax rate is not a solution to making sure that corporations pay their fair share. So, that's just one example, but I did look at an entire, the entire set of Wilmington and all the commercial properties. This data is from FOIA requests. It may be a little bit outdated, but I think the trends hold true, which is there's 2,700 commercial properties with the split tax rate, which the city of Wilmington implemented to hold commercial taxes revenue neutral. Of all those 2,700 commercial properties, 73%, 3/4 of them have a property tax increase. And that property tax increase results in $6.4 million increase in commercial tax revenue. And that is the, DuPont building paying, $2 million more than last year, but it's also the meat market. There's a lot of meat markets in that, in those 2,000 commercial properties that are a little bit overassessed, maybe a lot overassessed. So other taxes go up, as a result of with the flat tax, and as a result of the, split tax, they see their taxes going up even more. And this is why I think it's very important to get the assessment numbers correct before just implementing split rate commercial and residential. And so then you can look at, what else happens? Well, in addition to those, 2,000 commercial properties that are paying more, there's also 700 commercial properties that have a property tax decrease. And who are they? They're like that Delmarva building on Martin Luther King Boulevard that is underassessed. And other properties, like that, there's a lot of other properties like that are paying less taxes. And, based on, I think, not having assessment values that are quite accurate. And those 700 properties is going to result in $6.6 million decrease. But the most important aspect of all of that is that just 120 properties have property tax decreases of greater than $5,000. And most of the tax decrease from commercial tax revenue comes from just these properties. So it's like the JP Morgan Chases of the world that have these significant decreases, that the city is collecting significantly less tax money from them. And then it goes and is able to make that up, by collecting more money from the meat market and, your neighborhood restaurant. And to me, that's just not fair. And what we need to do is, as part of the policy solution to what happened with Tyler Technologies, we have to identify, were their assessments correct? Get them correct. Do what we need to do to make them correct. And then if splitting the tax rate between commercial and residential still makes sense, do that as well. But the first step has to be to ensure fairness. It has to be to get the assessment numbers to be correct, to match the fair market value, the actual value of these properties. So then moving on to residential properties, there's also issues with Tyler Technologies assessments of residential properties that we see a couple of trends. And one of those trends is that lower value properties get these over assessments. They get assessment values that are more than the person who owns the home could sell it for. So this is an example of a property in the city of Wilmington, actually in the 5th district, that sold into February of 2024. This is within the time period that Tyler Technologies was considering sale prices. It sold for $100,000. Somehow it got an assessed value of $163,000. Its school taxes were $231. They have jumped to $864. And so the owner of this home and the homeowners who live nearby, they're seeing these kinds of tax increases, and they're being asked to come up with this kind of money, which a lot of them have told me they don't have. So that's the impact of over assessing low value properties, is putting people into financial situations that are very difficult for them, and put them in a position of having to make very difficult choices about how are they going to come up with money that they don't have. And then, we also have properties in other parts of the county that are more valuable. And the dynamic here is that more valuable properties, some, not all, but some more valuable properties were underassessed. So this is a property in Greenville. It sold for $2.7 million in June of 2024. That's within the window of when Newcastle County was supposed to be, considering sales to establish its assessment values. It got an assessment value of $1.4 million. So this property, in terms of school taxes, it's going to pay a little bit more this year than it paid last year, but basically its school taxes are going to stay the same. So, the policy solution that is being advanced currently is that, we're going to create payment plans so that people can pay, if they don't have the money, they can pay over a longer time period. I think we need to go further. I think that we need to make a commitment that we are going to charge people, Newcastle County, City of Wilmington, school districts, we're going to charge people taxes based on the fair market value of their home. And that's the only way that we're going to get to fair taxes. So, here's a couple of scenarios. You take these same properties, the property, in Wilmington, in the city of Wilmington, that was taxed at its assessed value. This is its whole Newcastle County bill. So before we were just talking about its school taxes, this is its whole bill from Newcastle County. It increased by almost $1,000 this year compared to last year, based on an assessed value of $163,000. But we know that it sold for $100,000 in February of 2024. If this property, instead of having an assessed value of $163,000, if we used an assessed value of $100,000 to match its actual sale value, it would have had its taxes go up. They would have gone up by $500, not $1,000. So, which is still a big tax increase, but it's not like as big. It's not as overwhelming, and that's simply by not charging this property at an assessment value more than the home is worth. And then, then we have the property that is underassessed in Greenville. And this property, its assessed value is $1.4 million. So its total Newcastle County tax bill has actually gone down since last year using that assessed value of 1.4 million by $600. Now, if it was taxed at its fair market value, which is actually what our laws say, like property owners are supposed to be taxed at the fair market value of their properties, their homes. If it was taxed at its actual fair market value of 2.7 million, which is what it sold for in June of 2024, its property taxes would go up by $10,000. So instead of paying $12,000 a year in property taxes, it would pay 23,000. Now, if we were able to, which I think needs to happen, go back and make sure that corporations were paying their fair share, this property owner would probably not be seeing an increase of 10,000. It would probably be more reasonable because, corporations would be paying their fair share. But this, if taxed at the fair market value, this property in Greenville would see a property tax increase. And I think these two scenarios are more in line with what we all thought was going to come out of the assessment. Like we never thought the reassessment was going to come out with, low value properties are going to see their property taxes double and high value properties are going to get a tax cut. Like we never thought that was going to happen. And I think when you look at these two examples where you see that, the low value properties are underassessed and the high value properties are, no, the lower value properties are overassessed and the high value properties are underassessed, you can kind of see how if we fix that, we would get tax outcomes that would be more fair and would make a lot more sense. So just in summary, increasing the commercial tax rate as a standalone policy does not fully recoup lost tax revenue from large underassessed properties. And increasing the commercial tax rate increases the taxes of many smaller businesses. Property tax assessments are inaccurate for a concerning number of properties. And the taxes paid on the fair market value of residential properties and commercial properties makes more sense. So we have to, as a first step, we can't just say, oh, Tyler Technologies came up with these numbers and just take them as, just never question them. Just take them as a given. We have to say, are these numbers correct? And I'm really encouraged to see that County Council is now asking for an audit of Newcastle County's, of Tyler Technologies number. I think we need to go further. We need to have an audit. We need to identify where the errors are. And Newcastle County needs to take steps to correct the assessment values of the property so they equal fair market value before using these new assessment values to charge anyone taxes.